The night air sometimes carries whispers, not of the wind, but of things better left unspoken. Tonight, we're going to listen closely to some of those whispers. They come from the edges of our reality, from moments that snagged and tore, leaving behind an unsettling thread. Each one is a reminder that the world holds shadows far deeper than we often care to admit. So, find your quiet space, turn off the lights if you dare, put your headphones on, and prepare to step into the dark with Scareverse, because what we have for you tonight, it just might stay with you. The oddest thing about it wasn't the silence in the house, or even the way the front door had been left slightly ajar. It was the space on the bookshelf right next to the worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, where my favorite old anthology of ghost stories should have been. I'd had that book since I was a kid, a gift from my grandpa, and it always sat in that exact spot. I was 22, home from college for the summer, and I just walked in after a late shift at the diner. The house was usually bustling with my parents and younger sister, but they were all out of town visiting my aunt, leaving me alone for the first time in years. I remember thinking it was going to be a quiet, uneventful week. I pushed the front door open wider, the subtle creak echoing a little too loudly in the quiet. It was already dark outside, just past midnight, and the streetlights cast long, wavering shadows through the living room window. My parents were usually meticulous about locking up. They'd probably just forgotten in their rush to leave, I reasoned, though a small, cold knot began to form in my stomach. The air inside felt different, not colder, just stiller, like no one had breathed it for a while. I tossed my keys onto the hall table, the jingle sounding like a tiny explosion in the profound quiet. Every nerve in my body was suddenly on high alert, though I couldn't articulate why. It was just an open door, after all. I walked through the house, turning on lights as I went, a strange ritual of claiming the space. The kitchen was exactly as we'd left it that morning. A few dishes in the sink, a half-empty coffee mug on the counter. My sister's room was neat, her bed made, a stuffed animal perched on her pillow. My parents' room was the same, undisturbed. Everything was in its place except for that one book. I found myself checking locks on windows, double-checking the back door, an irrational need to secure everything. The feeling of unease persisted, a low hum beneath my skin. It was just the quiet, I told myself, the unfamiliarity of being truly alone in a house that was always full of life. Around 1 a.m., I was scrolling through my phone in the living room, trying to distract myself. My sister, Chloe, texted me, "Hey, did you get home okay? Left the door unlocked by mistake. Totally spaced it when we left." A wave of relief washed over me. "See? Just a simple mistake." I typed back, "Yeah, no worries. All good here. Miss you guys." A few minutes later, she replied, "Cool. I keep thinking I left something important behind, but can't figure out what." I laughed quietly to myself. Classic Chloe, always forgetting things. I told her not to worry about it, that everything was fine, and that I'd see them in a few days. The house still felt quiet, but the anxiety had receded, replaced by a dull tiredness. I decided to head to bed, but as I passed the small table in the hall, a framed photo caught my eye. It was an old picture of me and Chloe as kids, sitting on the couch, both of us grinning at the camera. I paused, smiling at the memory. Then my gaze drifted to the background of the photo. There, clearly visible on the bookshelf behind us, was the very same ghost story anthology I'd been looking for earlier. It was right there, exactly where it always sat. A chill ran down my spine, colder than any draft. How could it be in the photo if it was supposedly missing? I shook my head, trying to make sense of it. Maybe I was just tired, seeing things. I went back to the living room, feeling a renewed sense of dread. The empty space on the shelf stared back at me. There was no mistaking it. The book was gone. It wasn't a trick of the light, wasn't hidden behind another book. The space was utterly, undeniably empty. My mind raced, trying to reconcile the photo with the reality in front of me. Had I remembered its spot wrong? No, it was always there. Always. I felt a prickle of fear, a growing certainty that something was deeply wrong. I pulled out my phone, about to text Chloe again, to ask her about the book, but I hesitated. Felt childish, silly to make a big deal about a missing book. But the knot in my stomach was back, tighter than before. I ended up just going to bed, the mystery of the book nagging at me. The next morning, I woke up feeling unrest, the house still suffocatingly quiet. My phone buzzed. It was Chloe, a text from about 20 minutes ago. "Morning. Mom and Dad are worried. You never replied to my text last night. Are you okay?" My blood ran cold. I immediately scrolled back through our conversation from the night before. There it was, our chat clear as day. My messages, her messages. I even had a screenshot of my last text to her, saying, "All good here, no worries." But according to her, I hadn't replied at all. My heart started pounding against my ribs. This wasn't right. Something was terribly, horribly wrong. I called Chloe immediately. It rang once, twice, then her voicemail picked up. I tried my mom, then my dad. All went straight to voicemail. I texted Chloe again. "Chloe, what are you talking about? We texted last night. Are you okay? Call me." No reply. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, casting bright, indifferent light through the windows. But the warmth did nothing to dispel the growing chill inside me. I walked through the house again, slower this time, my eyes scanning every detail, every shadow. The empty space on the bookshelf seemed to mock me. The front door, which I had definitely locked the night before, was once again slightly ajar. Just a hair, but enough to notice. I stood in the driveway staring at the house. It looked exactly the same, perfectly normal in the bright morning light. But I knew with a terrifying certainty that it wasn't. I called the police, my voice shaking as I tried to explain that my family was missing, even though their car was gone and they were supposed to be out of town. The officer on the phone was patient, but clearly skeptical. There was no sign of forced entry, no struggle, just a missing book and some confusing text messages. They said they'd send someone to check on the house, but their tone implied they thought I was overreacting. I knew better. I knew they were never found. Not really. A week later, the police had found nothing. My family's car was located abandoned in a rest stop parking lot 3 states away, but no trace of them. My texts to Chloe and her replies were confirmed to have never actually been sent or received on her phone. They were only on mine. I moved out of that house eventually, unable to stand the silence. But every now and then, I find myself staring at a bookshelf, at the space where a beloved book should be. Because I know, with chilling clarity, that the house wasn't empty when I came home that night. Something else was there, something that left the door ajar, took that book, and sent those last texts from a number that wasn't Chloe's, to lure me back into a life that was now missing so much. It's easy to dismiss what we can't see, isn't it? To tell ourselves it was just a trick of the light, a figment of our imagination. But some things leave a mark, a feeling that lingers long after the moment has passed. And sometimes those marks aren't just in our minds. The coffee maker was still gurgling, even though I knew I'd unplugged it before I went to bed. I remember doing it because my roommate Sarah always complained about the faint hum, and I was trying to be considerate. It was a Monday morning, about 6:30 a.m., and the first sliver of sunlight was just hitting our kitchen window in our little rental house in Mesa, Arizona. I was heading out the door for my early shift at the diner, and Sarah, who worked remote, was usually still fast asleep. I remember thinking it was odd, but then I figured maybe I was just more tired than I thought, or Sarah had gotten up for water and plugged it back in. just a small, insignificant detail that I barely registered. My name is Emily, and at the time this happened, I was 23, sharing a slightly too small house with Sarah, who was 24. We'd known each other since high school and had moved to Mesa for college, then just stayed. Our routine was pretty solid. I left early. She woke up later. We'd meet up for dinner. That morning, after I'd showered and was grabbing my keys, I shot her a quick text. "Coffee maker was on? You up early?" I didn't expect a reply right away. She wasn't a morning person. I just sent it out of habit, a little ping to say good morning in our own way. It was the last message I ever sent to her phone that she would have seen. I walked out the front door, locked it, and got into my beat-up Civic. The neighborhood was quiet, just a few sprinklers running and a dog barking somewhere far off. Felt like any other mundane weekday morning. I pulled out of the driveway, glancing back at the house, a habit I had. Sarah's car was still parked in its usual spot under the carport. Everything looked normal. The blinds were drawn, as always, keeping the early sun out of the living room. There was nothing to suggest anything was out of place, nothing that would make me hesitate or even give it a second thought. Just the faint memory of that coffee maker humming, already fading into the background of my morning commute. My shift at the diner was busy, and I didn't check my phone until my first break around 9 a.m. I had a missed call from Sarah, timestamped 7:02 a.m. It was strange. She never called me that early. If she needed something, she'd text. I figured she probably woke up, saw my text about the coffee maker, and called to clarify, maybe to tease me about being forgetful. I texted her back, "Hey, missed your call? Everything okay?" No immediate response. I didn't think much of it. She probably just went back to bed or got engrossed in work. I went back to slinging pancakes, the diner noise drowning out any lingering oddness. Around lunchtime, I tried calling her again. It went straight to voicemail. Still not a huge deal. Her phone died sometimes, or she put it on silent during work. But a small knot of unease started to form in my stomach. By 3 p.m., when my shift ended, I'd called her 3 more times, and each went straight to voicemail. I drove home, a little faster than usual. The quiet hum of the road felt too loud, too empty. My mind started replaying the morning. The coffee maker, her early call, the lack of reply. It was probably nothing. She probably just decided to take an impromptu trip to visit her sister. But she would have told me. We always told each other. When I pulled into the driveway, Sarah's car was still there, and the front door was slightly ajar. Just a crack, maybe an inch or two. My heart instantly started to pound. I had explicitly locked it that morning. I always did. We both did. I slowly got out of my car, my eyes fixed on that sliver of dark space. The air felt heavy, still. I called out, "Sarah? Are you home?" My voice sounded thin, reedy. No answer. I pushed the door open the rest of the way, slowly, carefully. The living room was exactly as we'd left it. Nothing seemed out of place. Her laptop was still on the coffee table, a half-empty mug beside it. But there was no sign of her. I walked through the house, calling her name, my voice growing more urgent with each empty room. Her bedroom was quiet. The bed was unmade, just as she usually left it. Her phone charger was plugged into the wall, but her phone wasn't there. Her bathroom was clean. Her clothes were still in the hamper. Nothing was missing. Nothing was disturbed. It was like she had just stepped out for a moment. But the car was here, and the front door was open. And why wouldn't she answer her phone? The silence of the house pressed in on me, suddenly terrifying. It wasn't the silence of an empty home, but the silence of a home that should have been occupied. I called her parents first, then the police. They arrived quickly, 2 officers. They did a walkthrough, asked me questions. I told them about the coffee maker, the missed call, the open door. They checked the house for signs of forced entry, but found nothing. No broken windows, no ransacked drawers. It was too clean, too normal. They looked for her keys, her wallet, her purse. All gone. It looked like she had simply walked out, taking her essentials with her. But why would she leave her car? And why would she leave the front door open? And why wouldn't she answer her phone or tell anyone where she was going? It made no sense. The search for Sarah lasted for weeks, then months. Her face was on flyers on local news segments. There were theories, of course. She ran away. She met foul play. But there was never any evidence for either.
No trace.
No leads. She simply vanished. The police eventually closed the active investigation, labeling her a missing person. No further clues. I moved out of that house a few months later. I couldn't stand the silence, the constant feeling that she might just walk back through that open door. Sometimes, late at night, I still wake up thinking about that coffee maker. The one I unplugged. The one that was gurgling when I left. I wonder if she heard it too, and if it was the first thing she noticed that morning, right before she was never found. The world is full of sounds we rarely notice. A creak in the floorboards, a distant siren. But what about the silence? The kind that presses in when the only sound is your own breathing. And what if that silence is suddenly broken by something you never expected? The message itself wasn't strange, just a string of emojis. A party popper, a beer mug, and a winking face. What was strange was that it was from my friend Mark, sent at 2:47 a.m., and I knew for a fact he'd been home and asleep for hours. We were both 20, juniors in college, and lived off campus in a duplex about 20 minutes from each other. Mark was notorious for turning in early, especially on a Tuesday night. This was definitely a Tuesday night. I saw the text when I woke up around 7, lying in bed, scrolling through notifications before my alarm even went off. My first thought was that he'd accidentally butt-dialed or something, but it was a deliberate text, not a jumble of random characters. It just felt off. I typed back, "Dude, what was that about?" and waited. The morning went on, and no reply came. That was even stranger. Mark was glued to his phone. He'd respond to anything within minutes, even if it was just a LOL. I tried calling him around noon. It rang twice, then went straight to voicemail. His generic, slightly too enthusiastic voice greeting played, and I just hung up. I tried again an hour later, same result. A little flicker of unease started in my stomach. Maybe he'd gone out somewhere random, I thought, and lost his phone. But that didn't explain the 2:47 a.m. text from his phone. And even if he had lost it, he'd be reaching out from another line, freaking out about it. I messaged our other friends, Mike and Jess, asking if they'd heard from Mark. Mike replied almost immediately, saying he hadn't. Jess took a while longer, eventually texting back that she tried calling him too, and got no answer. The three of us were starting to get worried. This wasn't like Mark at all. He always kept in touch, always let us know his plans. By late afternoon, when he hadn't shown up for his calculus class, which he never missed, we decided to do a drive-by. Mike was free, so he picked me up, and we headed towards Mark's place. We told ourselves we were just being overprotective, that he was probably fine and would laugh at us later. Mark lived in a small, slightly run-down duplex with a patchy lawn and a cracked driveway. His car, a beat-up silver Civic, was parked in its usual spot. That was a relief in a way. It meant he hadn't driven off somewhere. We walked up to the front door, and Mike knocked. We waited. Nothing. He knocked again, harder, rattling the wood. Still nothing. I tried the doorbell, a tinny chime that sounded too loud in the quiet afternoon. The windows were all dark, the blinds drawn. It looked like nobody was home, or like whoever was inside was deliberately ignoring us. My stomach churned. This was starting to feel less like a friend playing a prank and more like something else. Mike tried the doorknob. To our surprise, it turned. The door wasn't locked. That was a definite red flag. Mark was meticulous about locking up. We pushed it open slowly, revealing a dark, silent living room. "Mark!" Mike called out, his voice echoing slightly. No answer. The air inside felt stale, a little cold. There was a faint smell, something metallic and sweet that I couldn't quite place. We stepped inside, our footsteps muffled by the old carpet. The TV was off, a scattering of snack wrappers on the coffee table. Typical Mark, but nothing out of the ordinary, except for the heavy silence. It wasn't just quiet. It was an absence of sound, like the house was holding its breath. We checked the kitchen. Dishes in the sink, a half-eaten bowl of cereal on the counter. Mark's breakfast, from that morning, or maybe the night before. It was impossible to tell. The back door was locked and secured. Upstairs, we found his bedroom. The bed was unmade, sheets tangled, just like he'd left it in a hurry. His laptop was open on his desk, but the screen was dark. His phone charger was plugged into the wall, but no phone was attached. That was another chilling detail. He never left without his phone, not even to go to the bathroom. And the fact that it was missing from his charger confirmed that the 2:47 a.m. text had indeed been sent from his phone, not some spare. We searched for any sign of a struggle, anything out of place. The bathroom was normal, the shower still damp. His closet was full of clothes. Nothing seemed to be missing, no drawers pulled out, no frantic mess. It was as if he'd simply walked out. But walked out of what? The house was sealed, his car was in the driveway, and his phone was gone. The only things that felt wrong were the open front door, the silence, and that one strange text message. We called the police. They arrived quickly, 2 officers, looking skeptical but going through the motions. They took our statements, walked through the house, and confirmed what we already knew. Mark was gone. The police concluded there was no forced entry, no signs of a struggle, and no immediate evidence of foul play. They classified it as a missing persons case, but without more, they couldn't do much beyond filing a report and putting out a bulletin. Mark's parents, frantic, drove up that night. They confirmed that nothing seemed stolen, nothing amiss. They couldn't offer any explanation either. The last time they'd spoken to him was the previous evening. A perfectly normal conversation. The metallic sweet smell I'd noticed downstairs? The officers dismissed it as maybe something from the fridge, or just an old house smell. But I knew it wasn't. It was something else entirely. Months passed. The initial flurry of news reports died down. The police eventually closed their active investigation. There were no leads, no witnesses, no trace of Mark or his phone. It was like he'd evaporated. We still talk about him, still wonder. But the thing that haunts me most is that text message. The party popper, the beer mug, the winking face. It wasn't a cry for help or a frantic goodbye. It was a casual, almost celebratory message. It felt like a signal, like he was saying, "I'm here, I'm at a party." But there was no party, and he wasn't there. It makes me wonder who sent it, and what kind of party he was really at wherever he went. We all have our routines, our safe paths. We navigate the day, expecting things to make sense. But what happens when the familiar twists? When the places we know become strange, and the search for answers leads us only deeper into something we can't comprehend. The only thing out of place was the truck, parked at an odd angle near the trailhead, as if someone had slammed on the brakes and just walked away. I was 17 that summer, working weekends for my uncle's landscaping business. Our job was usually pretty mundane. Mowing lawns, trimming hedges in the suburban sprawl. But this particular Saturday, we had a contract to clear some overgrown brush along the perimeter of the Meadow Creek State Park, a pretty isolated stretch of woods about 40 minutes outside of town. It was early, maybe 7 a.m., and the air was still cool, smelling faintly of pine and damp earth. Uncle Jim always liked to get an early start, beat the heat and the weekend hikers. He spotted the truck first. A beat-up, dark blue Ford F-150. Nothing inherently strange about a truck at a trailhead, of course. People hiked, people camped. But this one just felt wrong. My Uncle Jim was a man of routines. Predictable, practical. He valued order. So when he saw that truck, he squinted at it, his brow furrowed. "Looks like someone left it in a hurry," he grumbled, pulling our own work truck alongside it. There were no other cars in the small gravel lot. No tent visible from the road. No campfire smoke rising anywhere nearby. The park was vast, sure, but this particular trailhead was for a relatively short, popular loop. Not the kind of place you'd usually ditch a vehicle for days without a sign of a campsite. He checked the truck's bed empty. The driver's side door was unlocked, and the window was rolled down about halfway. A faint smell of stale coffee and something else, something metallic, hung in the air inside. It was unsettlingly quiet, just the rustle of leaves and distant bird calls. Jim walked around the truck slowly, his hands in his pockets, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. He peered into the cab. On the passenger seat, there was a worn leather wallet, open slightly, and a set of keys. Not on the ignition, just sitting on the seat. "Well, that's not right," he murmured, more to himself than to me. "People don't just leave their wallet and keys in an unlocked truck. Especially not out here. Not unless they planned on coming right back. Or unless they didn't have time to take them." He leaned in a bit closer, then straightened up. "No phone, though." I remember thinking that was even weirder. Who goes anywhere without their phone these days? We debated calling the park ranger, but Jim decided to give it an hour or so, just in case the owner had just popped off for a quick morning hike and would be back soon. He wrote down the license plate number, just in case. We started our brush clearing a little ways down the road, keeping an eye on the blue truck. An hour passed, then two. No one came back. Around 9:30 a.m., Jim made the call. The ranger showed up about 20 minutes later, a young woman named Miller. She took a look at the truck, saw the wallet and keys, and her expression immediately tightened. She made a few calls on her radio, and soon enough, another ranger truck pulled up, then a county sheriff's deputy. They identified the truck's owner as a man named Arthur Vance, mid-40s, lived about an hour away. No registered campers in the park under that name, no recent reports of missing persons. "He just vanished," Miller said, looking at the woods, then back at the truck. They decided to start a preliminary ground search, focusing on the main trail loops from that trailhead. My uncle offered our help, knowing the local terrain better than most. They appreciated it. We joined the small search party. It wasn't a full-blown emergency operation yet, more of a cautious exploration. We spread out, walking slowly along the main trail, calling out Arthur Vance's name every so often. The woods were quiet, almost too quiet. The usual sounds of cicadas and birds seemed muffled, distant. Every snapping twig, every rustle in the undergrowth, made me jump. I kept picturing Arthur, maybe injured, maybe just disoriented. But the lack of any sign was unnerving. No dropped water bottle, no discarded snack wrapper, nothing to indicate someone had walked this path recently, let alone been in distress. The trail itself was well-maintained, clear of obstacles. It felt like walking through a museum exhibit of nature, pristine and untouched, as if no one had stepped there for days. We followed it for almost 2 miles, reaching the small wooden bridge that marked the halfway point of the loop, then turned back. The sun was getting higher, dappling through the canopy, making the forest feel hotter and more oppressive. We hadn't found anything. Back at the trailhead, the deputy suggested we widen the search, just a little, veering off the main path in a few places. That's when things started feeling truly unsettling. When you're on a trail, there's a sense of order, a clear path. but stepping off it into the thick undergrowth, everything changes. The trees closed in, the sunlight struggled to penetrate. It was easy to get disoriented, even a few yards from the path. Every now and then, I'd hear one of the other searchers call out, their voices muffled by the foliage, sounding strangely distant even if they were close. We found nothing. No footprints, no broken branches that would indicate someone had pushed through. Just an unbroken carpet of leaves and ferns. It was as if Arthur Vance had simply dissolved into the landscape. The quiet was profound, heavy. Felt like the woods were holding their breath. After another hour of fruitless searching, Ranger Miller pointed to an almost invisible break in the trees, a faint indentation in the earth. There used to be an old game trail here, she said. Goes deeper into the less traveled parts of the park, mostly overgrown now. My uncle, with his knack for noticing details, frowned. Looks like something's been through there recently. A few leaves pushed aside, not naturally. We followed it. This wasn't a path. It was more like a suggestion of one, barely discernible. The undergrowth was thicker, the trees older and closer together. The air grew colder, even though the sun was still high. I felt a prickle on my neck, an irrational fear that we were going somewhere we shouldn't be. The trail went on for what felt like forever, getting narrower, more difficult to navigate. There was no sign of Arthur Vance, just the relentless, oppressive silence of the deep woods. It was as though the forest itself was absorbing all sound. Then we found it. Not a thing exactly, but a place. The almost trail opened into a small, circular clearing, barely 20 feet across. In the center, there was a single ancient oak tree, its branches gnarled and reaching. The ground in the clearing was inexplicably bare. No leaves, just packed dirt, almost like it was swept clean. And then I saw it. Just at the edge of the clearing, tucked partly under a low-hanging branch of the oak, was a single hiking boot. Mud-splattered, worn leather, size 10 or 11 maybe. And sitting neatly inside the boot, as if placed there deliberately, was a single, carefully folded white handkerchief. No other clothes, no other boot, no other sign of Arthur Vance. Just the boot and the handkerchief. It looked like something from a surreal painting. My uncle exchanged a look with Ranger Miller. The deputy radioed for more backup, and the tone in his voice was different now.
Urgent.
Cold. It wasn't a missing hiker anymore. It was something else entirely. The woods felt like they were watching us. More searchers arrived. K9 units. Forensics. The clearing was cordoned off. They scoured every inch of that small area and the surrounding woods for days, weeks. They never found Arthur Vance. Not a single other trace. No other clothes, no phone, no biological evidence that could point to what happened. Just that one boot, with the handkerchief folded inside, in a perfectly circular, oddly barren clearing deep in the woods. They tried to track the boot, but it led nowhere. The official explanation was that he likely suffered a medical emergency, became disoriented, and succumbed to the elements in an unreachable part of the park. But how does someone, in a medical emergency, neatly remove one boot, fold a handkerchief, and then vanish without a trace? The sheriff's office eventually closed the case, classifying Arthur Vance as a missing person, presumed deceased. But the questions lingered, heavy and unspoken. The memory of that empty clearing, the single boot, and the absolute silence of those woods still haunts me. Years have passed since that summer. I don't work for my uncle anymore, and I avoid that state park. But sometimes, when I'm alone in a quiet place, my mind goes back to Meadow Creek. I think about Arthur Vance, a man who just wanted to go for a hike, and ended up leaving behind only a truck, a wallet, and a single boot in a strangely clean clearing. I think about the sheer, impenetrable silence of those deeper woods, how they seem to swallow all sound and all light. And I wonder, still, what kind of emergency, what kind of disappearance leaves such a perfectly unsettling, incomplete picture. It wasn't a struggle. There were no signs of a fight. It was as if Arthur Vance simply stepped out of his life, one boot at a time, and into something the rest of us can't even begin to comprehend. The idea that someone could just cease to exist, leaving only a few mundane items behind, is far scarier than any monster story. Because it actually happened. He was never found, and the woods kept their secret. These aren't just stories. They're echoes. Proof that sometimes the most terrifying things are the ones that could happen to any of us at any time. They linger in the quiet moments, in the corners of our minds, because they tap into that primal fear of the unknown, the things we can't explain or control. And that's why they stay with us, long after the screen goes dark. If you're ready for more unsettling tales that linger, remember to subscribe for a new story every week.